The vast, glittering halls of the Galactic Empire's capital were silent, the kind of silence that reverberated with unease. In the heart of the Empire's imposing command center, where countless species and untold power met to decide the fate of the galaxy, something had shifted. A new presence had entered the fold. A foreign alien unknown, uninvited, and, by the look on the faces of the Empire's leaders, unwelcome. His arrival was nothing short of a warning. Rokthal, a towering figure clad in the intricate armor of his ancient people, stood before the High Council, his reptilian eyes gleaming with a knowing intensity. He was not just any envoy. He was a general, a leader of one of the oldest and most feared races in the galaxy. And he had come to deliver a message that the Empire would find impossible to ignore. A dire warning. Rokthal's voice, deep and rich with authority, filled the room like the hum of a distant thunderstorm. "I have come on behalf of the Sky Hunters," he began, his words heavy with purpose. The Sky Hunters were a name whispered in fearful tones across the stars. An ancient, nomadic species that had never shown any interest in galactic politics until now, until Earth. The Empire's council members exchanged uneasy glances, their arrogance still thick in the air, yet now laced with something else: uncertainty. Rokthal's people had been reclusive for centuries, and yet here he stood, daring to confront the heart of the galaxy's most powerful empire. "You are making a mistake," Rokthal continued, his gaze now sweeping across the assembled leaders, each of them frozen in disbelief. "Your empire's attempts to push humanity into your wars will not go unchallenged. They are more than capable of defending themselves, and their neutrality is not a weakness, it is a promise. And if you break that promise, the consequences will be catastrophic." The council laughed. It was a low, dismissive sound, the kind reserved for the weak and the foolish. They had seen alien species rise and fall, crushed by the might of the Empire's military machine. Humanity was no different, or so they thought. The chief strategist, a shrewd and battle-hardened being of unknown origin, leaned forward. "And what exactly do you propose, General?" he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "That we bow to your people's whims? Earth is but a fledgling world in a galaxy of giants. What can they do against the might of the Empire?" Rokthal's expression never changed. "The might of the Empire has already been tested by humanity, and you failed to notice. They have technology and alliances beyond your comprehension, and they are not as weak as you believe. You would do well to remember that." The council fell into an uneasy silence. Rokthal's words hung in the air, not yet fully understood, but undeniably powerful. His race was known for one thing above all: their ability to observe, calculate, and strike at the heart of their enemies with ruthless precision. They never spoke in threats. Their words were simply facts. And this warning, carried the weight of countless victories. The room buzzed with whispered conversations, as the high-ranking officials debated quietly among themselves, their certainty beginning to crack. For once, the Empire was not the one in control of the narrative. Rokthal's mission was clear, and he knew it was already too late for the Empire. In the distance, far beyond the reach of the Council's surveillance, Earth's forces had already begun to make their move. The newly designed warships, sleek and deadly, prepared for the Empire's inevitable retaliation. Their human pilots, young yet driven by an unyielding will to protect their world, had no idea what the galaxy was about to throw at them. But the Empire? They were already too late to stop it. "Let them remain neutral," Rokthal concluded, his voice steady as a blade, "or you will have to face consequences unlike any you have known. And when that day comes, no fleet, no weapon, and no empire will be able to save you." With that, the alien general turned and left the room, his massive frame disappearing into the corridors beyond. His words echoed in the minds of the council members, lingering in the silence that followed. Something was changing. The scales of power in the galaxy were shifting, and the Empire, for the first time in centuries, was not at the center. The Galactic Empire had never been questioned. Its reach stretched across star systems, its fleets were unmatched, and its rulers held absolute power. The words of a single alien general, no matter how imposing, had barely made a dent in its indomitable confidence. Rockthal's warning was brushed aside, and the Empire's leaders turned back to their own machinations with unshaken resolve. But their miscalculation would come at a cost. Unseen forces. In the deepest chambers of the Empire's War Council, the leaders convened once more. The atmosphere was thick with disdain for the mysterious alien envoy. To them, Rockthal was little more than an annoyance, his warning no more than an empty threat. They had dealt with countless rebellions, insurrections, and would-be conquerors over the millennia. None had ever truly posed a challenge. They saw humanity no different. Do not let the fool's words distract us. The Emperor's voice rang out, cold and calculating. Humanity is insignificant in the grand scheme. We will break them if necessary, but there is no need for that. Let us simply remind them of their place. The grand strategy of the Empire had always been one of overwhelming force. Diplomatic channels, for the most part, were little more than a formality. Conquer, assimilate, dominate. That was the way of the Empire. Earth had remained neutral for decades, refusing to choose sides in galactic conflicts. But neutrality was not a luxury the Empire intended to tolerate. Admiral Rasker, a hardened veteran of the Imperial Navy, leaned forward, his eyes glinting with ambition. The humans do not even understand the true nature of the Empire. They think their neutrality is a shield, but it is merely an invitation to be crushed. We can make an example of them. A simple demonstration of our power will be enough to send the message. The Council murmured in agreement. To them, Earth was an anomaly, an insignificant world, surrounded by far greater powers. What had once been considered a fringe colony now found itself at the heart of an interstellar conflict, but the Empire would not be deterred. Humanity's refusal to take sides in galactic disputes had been seen as a weakness, a political stance that would soon be shattered. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humanity had begun to rise in ways that the Empire had yet to realize. The past few decades had seen rapid advancements in technology, the likes of which had never been anticipated. The humans had begun constructing ships of war, sleek, highly advanced vessels, designed not for sheer power, but for efficiency, cunning, and adaptability. Their weapon systems were growing more sophisticated with every passing day, fueled by ingenuity rather than raw destructive force. The Empire had no idea just how dangerous this small, seemingly insignificant species had become. They saw only their fleets, vast, imperial, and powerful, too grand to be threatened by any singular civilization. But humanity was different. They were not simply looking to survive. They were preparing to strike back. The Empire's navy, a formidable force capable of wiping out entire fleets, was about to come face to face with something it had never encountered before. Earth's warships were a far cry from the massive, lumbering behemoths the Empire was accustomed to. These were ships designed to move swiftly, to adapt, to outmaneuver the enemy. They were armed with advanced technologies that defied imperial understanding, constructed by minds that had learned not just to fight, but to outthink their opponents. Back in the Imperial War Room, Admiral Rasker stood before a holographic projection of Earth, marking out the fleet's planned approach. "We'll strike fast, overwhelming their defenses before they even know what's at them," he declared, the arrogance in his voice unmistakable. "Our ships are unmatched in firepower. They won't last a moment." What Rasker and the Empire's leaders failed to grasp was the one thing humanity had in abundance: unpredictability. Earth's neutrality had not been a sign of weakness. It was a calculated decision, a strategy rooted in patience and preparation. Humans understood the importance of holding power in reserve, waiting for the right moment to unleash it. When that moment came, the Empire would find itself at the mercy of an adversary it had never anticipated, one with the strength of alliances that stretched beyond their comprehension. And so, with the arrogance of centuries of dominance, the Empire began its march toward Earth, confident that victory was assured. They would make an example of the humans, break their resistance in one swift stroke. But what they did not know, what they could not know, was that their greatest enemy was not the fleets they so easily commanded. It was the very thing they had overlooked all along: humanity's ability to innovate, to adapt, and to surprise. Their downfall had already begun, and the Empire would soon realize that the cost of underestimating Earth's potential was far higher than they ever could have imagined. The Empire's massive fleets, swift and relentless, made their way toward Earth. The Council's orders were clear: strike first, and end any resistance before it could even begin. But what they didn't know was that Earth had already prepared for this moment, and in ways that no one, least of all the Empire, could have predicted. The unseen advantage. In underground bunkers and top-secret labs across Earth, human ingenuity had been quietly turning the tide. For years, humanity had focused on advancing technology, not for domination, but for survival. The galaxy had always viewed Earth as a minor player, a primitive species incapable of challenging the might of the Empire. But the truth was far different. Earth's military had spent years developing new technologies, learning from the mistakes of the past, and forging alliances with some of the galaxy's most enigmatic species. Earth's new warships were unlike anything the Empire had encountered. They were small, fast, and equipped with cutting-edge stealth technology. Unlike the enormous, lumbering Imperial vessels, these ships were designed for hit-and-run tactics, focused on speed and precision rather than sheer firepower. They would not match the Empire in raw strength, but they would outsmart it. At the heart of this technological leap were the breakthroughs in energy shields and plasma weaponry, which, combined with advanced AI systems, allowed for near-perfect battlefield coordination. These ships could adapt in real time, responding to Imperial movements with deadly precision. Where the Empire relied on brute force, humanity relied on adaptability. And that was where the Empire had made its fatal mistake. They had failed to account for the human capacity for innovation. As the Imperial fleet approached Earth's orbit, their sensors detected nothing out of the ordinary. On the surface, Earth was, as it always had been, peaceful, isolated, and seemingly defenseless. But in the shadow of the planet, hidden deep within asteroid belts and behind the moons, Earth's fleets lay in wait, invisible to the Empire's radar. The first strike came swiftly. Without warning, a human warship appeared out of nowhere, its sleek form cutting through space with the grace of a predator. The ship's weapons fired in quick succession, launching precise bursts of energy that crippled the lead Imperial vessel. The Empire's commanders could hardly comprehend what had happened. One moment, their fleet was moving in unchallenged, and the next, they were under attack by a force they could not see, let alone defend against. The humans were not finished. More ships emerged from hidden positions, striking with coordinated efficiency, each one evading the Empire's tracking systems. The Empire's sensors, unable to keep up with the speed and unpredictability of the human tactics, were rendered useless. Rockthal had warned them. Humanity was not as weak as they had thought. And now, the Empire would see the full extent of that power. Rockthal watched from the distance, his voice low as he observed Earth's tactical brilliance. He had known that humanity's strength lay not in their size, but in their ability to adapt and innovate. Earth had always been a planet of survivors, and that spirit had carried them far. He had no doubt that the Empire, for all its strength, would soon find itself outmatched by a species that had long learned to fight in the shadows. Back on Earth, the human commanders were readying for the next phase of their defense. Earth's warships were not just equipped with advanced technology. They were driven by a fierce determination to protect what was theirs. The Empire had made its move, but the humans were not merely defending. They were attacking. Every action, every maneuver, was designed to weaken the Empire's resolve, to make them question their assumptions about Earth and its place in the galaxy. The first battle, fought on the edge of Earth's atmosphere, was a stark reminder of what the Empire was up against. The Empire's fleet had expected an easy victory, but what they faced was a foe that refused to yield, one that would not be cowed into submission. Humanity had proven that it would fight not just to survive, but to win. And the Empire had no idea just how deep Earth's preparations ran. For every ship they destroyed, two more seemed to appear, each more deadly than the last. Earth's hidden hand had already set its plan into motion, and now there was no turning back. The Empire's arrogance, once so certain, began to crack. What should have been a quick victory was turning into a disaster. The strikes against Earth had escalated beyond expectation, and every time the Empire thought it had gained the upper hand, humanity's hidden strength surged to meet them. Now, with Earth's forces pushing forward, the Empire realized the true cost of underestimating their resolve. Unraveling the Empire's might. The Empire had dispatched its elite forces, their most powerful fleets, the ones feared across the galaxy. But what they hadn't considered was the sheer unpredictability of Earth's war strategy. Each battle fought against the humans felt like a game of cat and mouse, with the humans always one step ahead. Their ships, small but nimble, could shift tactics mid-engagement, throwing off the Empire's precision and devastating their much larger warships. It wasn't just Earth's technology that the Empire underestimated. The humans had learned something invaluable in their years of isolation. They had mastered the art of surprise, of acting with speed, precision, and calculated unpredictability. Where the Empire relied on its overwhelming strength, humanity's strength lay in its ability to learn and adapt. And this became the core of their strategy. Each victory that humanity claimed sparked a ripple across the Empire's ranks. Shockwaves of confusion reverberated through Imperial command centers. The once unshakable confidence of the Empire's military leaders began to fray. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was forced to rethink its strategy, not just in terms of military tactics, but on a larger, more profound scale. Humanity, it seemed, was not the easy target they had assumed. In the midst of these battles, Admiral Rasker's confidence had begun to falter. The initial plan to crush Earth's resistance had failed. The fleet was divided, caught off guard by guerrilla-style warfare they had never encountered before. No sooner did they destroy one human ship than two more appeared, often taking out key positions in Imperial forces before vanishing once again into the blackness of space. Rasker's frustration boiled over as he observed the latest wave of human counterattacks. "How are they doing this?" he muttered to himself. The reports from his officers made it clear. The Empire's technology was being bypassed, its superior numbers negated by an enemy they could neither predict nor keep up with. Meanwhile, Earth's strategy was becoming clearer. It wasn't just about defeating the Empire in the immediate battles. It was about wearing them down, making them question their superiority, and forcing them into a position where retreat would be the only option. Earth's fleets were operating in a way the Empire had never experienced before. Hit-and-run tactics designed to erode the Empire's resolve and morale. It was not just about fighting. It was about creating an environment where the Empire's overwhelming power became its greatest weakness. And that was where Earth excelled. The human capacity to think strategically, to learn from each engagement, and to fight with everything they had was becoming a problem the Empire had no solution for. Rockthal, watching from a distance, knew the tipping point had been reached. The humans were no longer defending. They were actively reshaping the war. Each engagement proved that they had mastered the art of war on their own terms. And their newfound alliances with alien races, those once considered fringe elements of galactic society, were paying off in ways that the Empire could never have anticipated. Rockthal had always believed that humanity's greatest weapon was its adaptability, but now he saw something else, an unstoppable drive to protect what was theirs. It was no longer just about military strategy. It was about a species' refusal to be dominated. This was a fight for survival. And humanity was proving it would not bow to any empire. The Empire, now scrambling to reassess its tactics, ordered its forces to regroup, to consolidate their power in a final attempt to subdue Earth. But the damage had already been done. The Empire's military hierarchy was in chaos, its fleets decimated, and morale at an all-time low. Earth's fleets, while still outnumbered, were proving that the might of the Empire could be matched, and even overcome. Back on Earth, human commanders were making their final preparations for what would come next. They had fought bravely and with cunning, but the Empire's final response would come soon. And this time, the stakes would be higher than ever. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were preparing for the decisive moment, the point of no return. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and that mistake was about to cost them everything. Rockthal stood at the edge of the galactic battlefield, silently observing as humanity's forces moved into position for the next phase of their defense. They were about to make their final stand, one that would decide the fate of not just Earth, but the galaxy itself. The battle for survival was no longer just about technology or tactics. It had become a war of wills, and humanity's will to survive, to protect their world, was something the Empire could never comprehend. The Empire's arrogance, once a shield of invulnerability, had shattered. The first wave of human resistance had exceeded all expectations. What had started as a series of skirmishes had now escalated into a full-fledged war, with Earth's forces challenging the Empire in ways that even Rockthal hadn't fully anticipated. The time for underestimating humanity was over. A battle of resolve. As the Empire scrambled to reinforce its position, Earth's fleet executed its next move with brutal precision. The Galactic Empire's most elite units, which had crushed so many before, now found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The humans had adapted again, making use of the very terrain they once considered a hindrance. The asteroid belts, the moons of distant planets, and the shadow of comets, all became tools in their relentless defense. The Empire's vast superiority in numbers and firepower was now their greatest disadvantage. The human warships, small and nimble, slipped in and out of cover with ease, striking where the Empire least expected. The Empire's great battleships, so imposing in their own right, could not match the speed of their opponents, nor the unpredictability of their tactics. Every time they launched a counterattack, they found themselves faced with a trap instead of a fight. Every victory, they claimed, came at a staggering cost. Admiral Rasker, now leading a desperate counteroffensive, watched in frustration as one of his flagships disappeared in a flash of light. He had underestimated the humans, but now their persistence had begun to break the Empire's resolve. Reports from the front lines were increasingly grim, as Earth's forces grew more daring. The Imperial fleet was crumbling under the pressure. Rockthal, observing from the shadows, felt a surge of respect for humanity's tenacity. What had begun as a conflict to preserve neutrality had transformed into something more, a war for freedom, for survival. The Empire, once the galaxy's apex predator, had become a wounded beast, desperate and disoriented. Rockthal had known the Empire would not go down easily. But what surprised him most was the resolve of the human commanders. They had fought with an intelligence and ruthlessness that rivaled any of the galaxy's most experienced leaders. The Empire had underestimated not just their technology, but the spirit that drove them to fight. Every move made by humanity felt like a declaration, a message that the galaxy's power structures were not as permanent as the Empire believed. On Earth, the war was no longer just about military might. Every victory for humanity was a victory for their way of life. Every ship destroyed, every Imperial fleet broken, was proof that they could not be controlled. It was a message to the galaxy. Earth would not bow to anyone, not the Empire, not any of the so-called superior races. The Empire's leaders, now painfully aware of how grave their situation had become, called for reinforcements from the furthest reaches of their domain. Entire sectors were mobilized to ensure Earth's resistance was crushed. But the more they pushed forward, the more humanity fought back, carving out their victories and leaving a trail of destruction behind. The Empire's fleets had become a series of decimated remnants, unable to recover from the constant pressure they faced. And in the shadows of Earth's growing defense, a new force had begun to emerge. Humanity's alliances with long-forgotten races were paying dividends. Species once thought to be weak, insignificant, or irrelevant were now bringing their full military strength to bear against the Empire. This new coalition was not just about human ingenuity. It was about unity. The same alliances that had kept Earth neutral for so long were now taking sides, and the Empire could not control what it did not understand. The situation had become critical for the Empire. Their command structures were falling apart, their fleets were being torn asunder, and their own political stability was beginning to crumble. What had been a simple conquest was now a full-scale galactic war, a war in which they were losing. On Earth, the tide had turned. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were now leading the charge against an empire that had taken them for granted. The first true victory for Earth had been secured, but it was only the beginning. With each day, humanity grew stronger, more organized, and more dangerous. The empire had ignited a fire they could no longer control. The end game was drawing near. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive the empire's wrath, but whether the empire itself would survive the fight. And the answer to that question was becoming increasingly uncertain. The last gamble had begun. The Galactic Empire, cornered and desperate, had unleashed its ultimate weapon, an enormous, galaxy-shattering superweapon capable of erasing entire planets in a single blast. Earth's defiance had pushed the Empire to the brink, and now, in one final deadly move, they intended to crush it once and for all. The Empire's last weapon. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Rasker stood before a holographic map, his eyes fixed on Earth. He had watched his fleet dwindle, his commanders fall, and his confidence erode. But now, with the superweapon in position, victory was within reach. The weapon's core, a concentrated burst of energy capable of obliterating anything in its path, was ready for activation. All that remained was the push of a button, and Earth would be reduced to cosmic dust. "We end this now," Rasker muttered to himself, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. The failure of his fleets and the crushing losses he had endured were now just a memory. In his mind, this weapon would redeem the Empire. It would restore their power, wipe out the humans' resistance, and remind the galaxy that the Empire was unstoppable. The weapon was now positioned in orbit above Earth, its targeting systems locked. A single command would unleash the devastating blast, turning the planet into a barren wasteland. The Empire's pride would be avenged, and the galaxy would once again know who held the true power. But on Earth, humanity was not yet finished. The warships that had once only defended their home now gathered in preparation for the final confrontation. Human ingenuity had once again outstripped the Empire's expectations. The coalition of species that had aligned with Earth had one final trick up their sleeves. A covert strike team, led by the best humanity had to offer, was already on its way to sabotage the superweapon. They were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. Rockthal, watching from a distant observation point, knew that the Empire had made a fatal mistake. The weapon, while powerful, had become their undoing. They had underestimated the resourcefulness of humanity. They had thought that by cornering Earth, they could crush it. But Rockthal understood now that Earth's will to fight was far greater than the Empire's might. As the strike team made their way toward the weapon, they encountered fierce resistance. Imperial soldiers, once a terrifying force, were now scattered and disorganized, unprepared for the sudden, guerrilla-style assault. Earth's commandos, trained in the harshest conditions and led by tactical geniuses, moved through the corridors of the weapon's fortress with surgical precision. Back on Earth, the final battle had begun in earnest. Imperial ships launched wave after wave of assaults, but humanity was ready. Every tactic, every strategy had been designed with one thing in mind: to destroy the Empire's final hope. The battle raged on, and the superweapons countdown continued. The strike team, led by Earth's top commander, reached the core of the superweapon. They worked quickly, using the advanced technology they had acquired in their partnerships with alien species to dismantle the weapon's control systems. But time was running out. The countdown was nearing its final seconds, and the Empire had no idea that their weapon was already being neutralized from the inside. Rockthal watched in silent anticipation. His faith in humanity had always been unwavering, but even he had not expected this: an entire galactic empire, brought to its knees by the sheer will of a species determined to survive. And yet, here they were, ready to face down the most destructive force in the galaxy with nothing but their courage and resolve. The countdown reached 0. The superweapon was primed. But before the weapon could fire, an explosion ripped through the control room, and the weapon's core imploded in a spectacular burst of light. The Empire's last chance was gone, shattered in an instant by the human strike team. The battlefield fell silent. The Empire's forces, suddenly leaderless and disoriented, were easy prey for Earth's fleet, which pressed the attack. One by one, Imperial ships were destroyed, their crews scrambling to escape or surrender. With the superweapon destroyed and the Empire's fleets in disarray, the humans had won. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for the galaxy had only just begun. Earth, once a small and insignificant planet, had now proven its worth, and in doing so, had forever altered the balance of power in the galaxy. Rok'Thal turned away from the view of the shattered weapon and the burning remnants of Imperial fleets. He had warned the Empire. Now, the galaxy would bear witness to the rise of a new power, humanity.